Hello viewers. Today we will be visiting very famous Tallinn Medieval Old Town. It is not very far from our home. We will take a tram to reach there, and it will take around 15 minutes. Most of the public transport in Tallinn run through Keskland district where the old town is situated. So, let's go and explore the very famous Tallinn Old Town. Nestled on the southern coast of the Gulf of Finland, Tallinn's Old Town, Varnelin, is not merely a historical district. It is a living, breathing chronicle etched in limestone and cobblestone. A UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1997, it stands as one of Europe's most completely preserved medieval urban landscapes, a miraculous survival of the tumultuous centuries that reshaped the continent. To walk its winding, cobbled streets is to traverse a timeline of power, faith, commerce, and culture. From its ancient Estonian roots to its Hanseatic zenith, from the grip of successive empires to its rebirth as a capital of a proud republic, Tallinn's Old Town is a palimpsest, where each era has left an indelible yet layered mark. This video will unfold the rich tapestry of its history, exploring how a small hillfort evolved into a strategic Danish outpost, a powerhouse of the Hanseatic League, a prized jewel for German, Swedish, and Russian rulers, and finally, the symbolic heart of the Estonian nation. It is a story of merchants and monks, knights and tsars, invaders and independence fighters, all of whom have contributed to the unique character of this extraordinary urban space. Long before Danish flags fluttered from the limestone cliffs, the hill of Toompea was the center of a thriving Estonian settlement. The ancient Estonians, a Finnic people, had established a fortified stronghold on this naturally defensible site, which they called Lindanes, or, in some chronicles, Kolovin. This prehistoric settlement was part of the county of Revala, Harjumaa in Estonian, and its strategic importance was already evident. Overlooking a deep, natural harbor, it was a node in regional trade routes, connecting the Estonian hinterland with Viking traders from the west and Slavic principalities from the east. Archaeological evidence suggests continuous settlement on Toompea from at least the 10th century. The fortifications were typical of the era, wooden ramparts and earthen embankments encircling a community of wooden longhouses. Life in Lindanes was governed by local chieftains and shaped by the indigenous Estonian pagan beliefs, which venerated spirits of nature and ancestors. The Tomamägi, Cathedral Hill, was not just a strategic point but likely a sacred one. The settlement below the hill, towards the harbor, was a trading post, a place where furs, wax, amber, and grain were exchanged for silver, weapons, and luxury goods. This era represents a foundational layer of Tallinn's history, a time of relative autonomy and indigenous development. The Estonian world was a patchwork of such counties, often warring amongst themselves, but capable of united resistance against external threats. The arrival of German missionaries and crusaders at the end of the 12th century, followed by the Danish ambitions of expansion, would forever shatter this world. But the memory of Lindanes remains a bedrock upon which the city was built. The very geography that made it an ideal Estonian stronghold would now make it a coveted prize for foreign powers, setting the stage for a dramatic and transformative conquest. The year 1219 marks a pivotal moment when Tallinn enters the written history of Western Christendom, and its destiny is irrevocably altered. The catalyst was the Northern Crusades, a complex movement blending religious zeal, territorial ambition, and commercial interest. While German sword brethren had begun subjugating parts of southern Estonia, the Danish king Valdemar II, seeking to expand his empire across the Baltic, set his sights on the north. In the summer of 1219, a formidable Danish fleet landed at the bay beneath the Lindanis stronghold. According to legend, a bloody battle ensued. The chronicler Henry of Livonia recounts that during a critical moment when the Danish forces were faltering, a red banner with a white cross fell from the sky, rallying the troops to a decisive victory. This event, whether myth or reality, gave birth to the Dannebrog, the national flag of Denmark, and symbolized the divine sanction of the conquest. The Danes seized the stronghold, renamed it Revel, likely derived from Revala, surrounding county, and began constructing a stone castle on Tompi to replace the wooden Estonian fortifications. The Danish conquest was the founding act of the medieval city. King Valdemar II initiated a systematic colonization effort, inviting merchants and artisans primarily from Gotland and Lower Germany to settle in the new town. He granted Revel its first charter, the Lübeck Law, around 1248. This was a crucial development. Lübeck law was one of the most advanced municipal legal systems of the time, granting the town a significant degree of self-government, its own courts, and regulations that facilitated trade. This legal framework attracted more settlers, creating a distinct social divide. The Domburg, Tompi, became the seat of the Danish and later German, secular and ecclesiastical authority, while the lower town developed as a bustling, autonomous merchant republic. The initial decades were unstable. The Estonians, chafing under foreign rule, launched the Great St. George's Night Uprising in 1343, which nearly succeeded in overthrowing the Danish and German rulers. The rebellion was brutally suppressed, but it demonstrated the fragility of the new order. Weakened and overstretched, the Danish crown made a fateful decision in 1346, selling its territories in northern Estonia, including Revel, to the Teutonic Order, a powerful German military crusading order. Thus ended the Danish chapter, but the name Revel and the civic structures they established would endure for centuries, forming the essential DNA of the emerging city. The sale to the Teutonic Order, ironically, ushered in Revel's golden age. The order, focused on its administrative center in nearby Paid, granted Revel considerable autonomy, allowing its merchant elite to flourish. This period coincides with the city's full integration into the Hanseatic League, a powerful confederation of merchant guilds and market towns that dominated trade in northern Europe from the 13th to the 17th centuries. Revel's membership in the Hanseatic League was a key to its prosperity. Its location was perfect. It was the northernmost Hanseatic port, the last stop for westbound ships before the long journey across the Baltic Sea to Lübeck and beyond. It became a critical intermediary in the east-west trade. From Novgorod and Pskov in the Russian lands came priceless goods: furs, sable, marten, squirrel, wax for candles, honey, flax, and hemp. These were stored in Revel's warehouses, notably the iconic three-story Three Sisters building, before being shipped west. In return, Western Europe sent salt, vital for preserving food, cloth, especially from Flanders, wine, spices, and herring. This commercial wealth transformed the physical fabric of the lower town. The 14th and 15th century saw an unprecedented building boom. The fortifications were massively expanded into the formidable ring of walls and towers that still define the city's silhouette. At its peak, the wall was 2.4 kilometers long, up to 16 meters high, and boasted 46 defensive towers, each maintained by a specific guild. As an example, the Keek and the Coke Tower. The heart of civic life, the town hall square, Rekoyaplatz, took shape. The magnificent town hall itself, the only intact Gothic town hall in Northern Europe, was completed in 1404, its spire crowned with a weather-vane figure of old Thomas Varnatimus, the city's guardian. Grand merchant houses, guild halls like that of the Great Guild, Sergild, and the Brotherhood of Blackheads, and soaring churches like St. Olaf's, Olevis, and St. Nicholas's, Nigulis, were constructed, testifying to the wealth and piety of the citizenry. Socially, the city was rigidly stratified and dominated by the German-speaking merchant elite. The patricians, who controlled the city council, Ratsherren, lived in luxurious stone houses around the main square. Artisans, organized into powerful guilds, formed the middle class, while Estonians were largely relegated to the status of a non-citizen underclass, working as servants, laborers, and potters. This German-dominated Hanseatic period created the essential medieval character of Tallinn's Old Town, a character so powerfully preserved that it continues to enchant visitors today. It was a time of immense wealth, civic pride, and architectural splendor, establishing Revel as a cornerstone of the Baltic world. The skyline of medieval Revel was dominated not by secular towers of commerce, but by the spires of its churches, each telling a story of faith, community, and ambition. The religious architecture of the Old Town is a profound expression of its Hanseatic identity, blending spiritual devotion with civic pride and the practical realities of a merchant city. On Tompi, the domed church, Tomkirk, initially a wooden chapel built by the Danes after 1219, was rebuilt in stone and became the church for the German nobility, knights, and high clergy. Its interior is a veritable museum of Baltic German history, filled with elaborate coats of arms and tombs of prominent figures from the centuries of German rule. In the lower town, the parish churches serve distinct communities. St. Nicholas Church, Nigulis, dedicated to the patron saint of sailors and merchants, was funded by the wealthy merchants of the city and became renowned for its opulent interior, including Bernd Notke's famous dance macabre painting. St. Olaf's Church, Olevis, named after the Norwegian King Olaf II, served the Scandinavian merchants and the common people. Its soaring spire, which in the 16th century made it one of the tallest buildings in the world, was as much a navigational aid for ships as a testament to God's glory. The mendicant orders also left their mark. The Dominican monastery, Dominiclas Kloster, established in 1246, was a center of learning, while the Franciscans, Grey Friars, had a presence as well. These orders engaged with the urban population more directly than the cathedral clergy on the hill. The architecture was overwhelmingly Gothic, characterized by pointed arches, ribbed vaults, and soaring verticality. But these buildings were more than just places of worship. They were social hubs and statements of power. The guilds maintained side altars in the churches, and their members were buried in chapels adorned with their emblems. The construction and maintenance of these massive structures required vast resources, a testament to the city's economic might. The churches were also refuges. Their thick walls were integrated into the city's defensive system. The story of medieval Revel is inextricably linked to the faith of its people, a faith that motivated the crusaders who founded it, guided the merchants who enriched it, and inspired the artisans who built its most enduring monuments. This deeply Catholic world, however, was on the verge of a seismic shock that would reshape its spiritual landscape forever. The early 16th century brought winds of change that swept across Europe from Wittenberg, challenging the very foundations of medieval Christendom. The Protestant Reformation, initiated by Martin Luther, found fertile ground in the cities of the Hanseatic League, where resentment towards the wealth and corruption of the Catholic Church dovetailed with a desire for greater civic control over religious life. The Reformation reached Revel swiftly, brought by German merchants and preachers. In 1523, the Lutheran preacher Zacharias Hossi began preaching at the Church of the Holy Spirit, Puhavaimu, a chapel that served the Estonian-speaking population. His sermons, advocating for salvation by faith alone and the authority of Scripture, resonated with a population eager for spiritual renewal in their own language. The movement quickly gained popular support, leading to iconoclastic riots in 1524. Mobs stormed the churches of St. Olaf, St. Nicholas, and the Dominican monastery, destroying statues, altarpieces, and other papist symbols. This was not merely a spontaneous outburst of religious fervor, but a calculated political act by the city council. Seeing an opportunity to seize church property and consolidate its authority, the council officially adopted Lutheranism in 1525. The Catholic bishop on Tumpi was stripped of his power, monasteries were dissolved, and their lands and wealth were confiscated by the city. The Church of the Holy Spirit became a center for Lutheran preaching in Estonian, and the first books in the Estonian language, a Lutheran catechism and a prayer book, were published in the 1530s, an event of monumental importance for Estonian national culture. The Reformation had a profound impact on the city's appearance and social structure. The interiors of the great churches were whitewashed, stripped of their medieval art, and refocused on the pulpit and the word. The social role of the church changed, now becoming an instrument of the city government for education and poor relief. The shift to Lutheranism solidified the German cultural dominance, but also, paradoxically, began the process of creating a written Estonian language, planting a seed that would bear fruit centuries later. As the Hanseatic League began to decline due to new trade routes and the rise of nation-states, Revel, now a Lutheran city, faced a new and formidable threat from the east: the expanding Russian Tsardom under Ivan the Terrible. The Livonian War, 1558 to 1583, shattered the political order of the Eastern Baltic. The Teutonic Order, weakened and anachronistic, dissolved its Livonian branch. Faced with the advancing armies of Tsar Ivan IV the Terrible, who had already sacked other Hanseatic cities like Narva, the nobility and citizenry of Reval faced a stark choice: surrender to Moscow or seek the protection of a foreign monarch. In 1561, they voluntarily submitted to the King of Sweden, Erik XIV. The Swedish era is often remembered as a good old Swedish time in Estonian historical memory, particularly in contrast to the subsequent centuries of Russian rule. It was a period of relative stability and legal consolidation. The Swedish crown confirmed the city's privileges and the special status of the Baltic German nobility, ensuring the continuation of their local autonomy, language, and Lutheran faith. While Reval commercial significance waned as the Baltic trade shifted increasingly into the hands of the Dutch and Swedes, the city found a new role as a key administrative and military center within the Swedish Empire. The era saw significant intellectual and educational advancement. In 1631, the Swedish king Gustavus Adolphus founded a gymnasium, a secondary school, in Reval, which would later evolve into the University at Tartu. This emphasis on education had a lasting impact. The city's fortifications were modernized according to the latest military engineering principles to withstand artillery, with the addition of earthwork bastions around Tompi, traces of which can still be seen in the parks that encircle the hill. Architecturally, the late Renaissance and early Baroque styles began to influence the previously Gothic city. The interior of the town hall was renovated, and new, more comfortable patrician houses were built. However, the 17th century was not without its trials. A great fire in 1684 destroyed much of the wooden buildings in the lower town and damaged the Tompi castle, which was subsequently rebuilt in a grand Baroque style, giving it the pink, palatial facade that characterizes it today. The plague also struck the city periodically. Yet, overall, the Swedish period provided a crucial century and a half of consolidation, allowing the city's unique Baltic German culture to mature. This relative calm, however, was shattered by the Great Northern War, which would bring a new and enduring imperial master to Reval. The initial decades of Russian rule were difficult. The city's population and economy were shattered. Peter the Great, however, recognized the value of his new Baltic ports. Rather than Russifying them immediately, he confirmed the Privilegium Sigismundi Augusti, the privileges that granted the Baltic German nobility in the towns their traditional rights, including the use of the German language, Lutheran religion, and local self-government. For the next 2 centuries, Reval remained a fundamentally German city in culture and administration, now serving as a capital of the Estonian governorate within the Russian Empire. The 19th century brought profound changes. The Napoleonic Wars and the Industrial Revolution began to integrate Reval more fully into the empire. The city walls, now obsolete for defense, were partially dismantled, and new parks were created in their place. The construction of the railway connecting Reval to St. Petersburg in 1870 was a transformative event, spurring industrial growth outside the Old Town and leading to the development of new districts like Kalamaja and the city center around Varnalen. The harbor was modernized, and industries such as machine building and textile flourished. This period also saw the birth of the Estonian national awakening. Inspired by the Romantic movement, educated Estonians began to collect folklore, establish Estonian language societies and newspapers, and articulate a modern national identity. The first Estonian Song Festival was held in Reval in 1869, a powerful manifestation of this cultural revival. While the Old Town remained the domain of the Baltic German elite, the Estonian majority was becoming an increasingly confident political force. By the dawn of the 20th century, the stage was set for a dramatic confrontation between the old order and the emerging national aspirations of the Estonian people, aspirations that would culminate in the revolutionary turmoil of World War I. The collapse of the Russian Empire in the 1917 February Revolution created a power vacuum. The Baltic German nobility sought to create a united Baltic duchy under German protection, while the Estonian national movement, represented by the Maapäev Provincial Assembly, declared its ambition for full autonomy. On February 24, 1918, as German forces approached the city and Bolshevik forces retreated, the Salvation Committee of the Estonian National Council proclaimed the independent Republic of Estonia from the capital, Reval. The city's name was officially changed to the Estonian Tallinn. The subsequent War of Independence, 1918 to 1920, against both Bolshevik Russia and the German Landeswehr was fierce, but the Estonian forces, with crucial foreign support, emerged victorious. The Treaty of Tartu in 1920 formally recognized Estonia's independence. Tallinn's Old Town, for the first time in its history, became the capital of a sovereign Estonian state. The interwar period was a time of transformation and national assertion. The Old Town underwent significant changes to suit its new role. Many of the historic buildings, which had fallen into disrepair during the imperial era, were meticulously restored. The functions of buildings changed. The Toompea Castle, once the seat of the Russian governor, now housed the Parliament of the Republic of Estonia, the Riigikogu. The medieval Great Guildhall became the home of the Estonian History Museum, symbolizing the reclamation of national history. Architecturally, the era saw the construction of new, functionalist-style government buildings on the periphery of the Old Town, but a conscious effort was made to preserve the historic core's character. This period represented a brief but golden chapter of self-determination. The German patrician houses were now occupied by Estonian politicians, artists, and intellectuals. The churches, once symbols of foreign faith, now serve the Estonian-speaking Lutheran congregation. For 20 years, Tallinn's Old Town was not a relic of a foreign past, but the vibrant, living heart of a modern European nation. This hard-won independence, however, was tragically short-lived, extinguished by the secret protocols of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and the outbreak of World War II. The half century from 1940 to 1991 was the darkest period in the modern history of Tallinn's Old Town. In June 1940, the Soviet Union, following its pact with Nazi Germany, invaded and illegally annexed Estonia. The first year of Soviet rule was marked by brutal repression, mass deportations of Estonian citizens to Siberia, and the nationalization of property. The Old Town's population was traumatized, and its cultural life was suppressed. Nazi Germany invaded the USSR in 1941 and occupied Tallinn until 1944. While the German occupation lifted the immediate Stalinist terror, it brought its own horrors, including the Holocaust, which decimated Tallinn's small Jewish community. The most significant physical damage to the Old Town occurred during the Soviet reconquest in 1944. In March 1944, Soviet bombers launched a devastating air raid targeting the city center. The raid caused immense destruction, particularly in the Harriu Street and Lai Street areas, reducing many historic buildings to rubble. The iconic spire of the Church of the Holy Spirit was hit, and the Dominican monastery complex was severely damaged. After the war, Estonia was reincorporated into the Soviet Union. The Soviet authorities had little interest in preserving the Old Town as a symbol of Estonian or Hanseatic heritage. A general policy of neglect set in. The historic buildings, now state property, were divided into communal apartments, kommunalkas, leading to overcrowding and decay. The infrastructure crumbled. Perhaps most symbolically destructive was a plan, typical of Soviet urban planning, to drive a wide, modern highway through the heart of the Old Town. While this plan was never fully realized, the threat loomed for decades. Yet, despite the official neglect, a dedicated group of Estonian architects, historians, and restorers worked quietly, often against bureaucratic inertia, to document the damage and carry out essential repairs. Their efforts, a form of cultural resistance, ensured that the core structure of the medieval city survived. The Old Town became a place of silent memory for Estonians, a physical reminder of a lost independence and a different European identity, standing in stark contrast to the monolithic Soviet concrete blocks being erected around it. It was this lingering spirit of the past that would eventually help fuel the movement for national liberation. In the late 1980s, Mikhail Gorbachev's policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring, created an opening for suppressed nationalist movements across the Soviet Union. In Estonia, this culminated in the Singing Revolution, a peaceful, mass movement for independence that used song as its primary weapon. Tallinn's Old Town was a central stage for this dramatic rebirth. The movement's key events unfolded in the symbolic spaces of the capital. In 1987, the first major public demonstrations against Soviet rule began. In 1988, the Old Town Song Festival grounds, just outside the medieval walls, hosted the Estonian Song Festival, which turned into a massive political rally with hundreds of thousands of people singing forbidden patriotic hymns. The Baltic Chain in 1989, a human chain of 2 million people stretching from Tallinn through Riga to Vilnius, passed through the Old Town, visually linking the city to the other Baltic capitals in a demand for freedom. The Old Town itself became a canvas for protest. The Estonian blue-black-white tricolor flag, banned for decades, was repeatedly raised atop the spire of Pikk Hermann Tower on Toompea, only to be torn down by Soviet authorities in a cat-and-mouse game that captured the world's attention. The cobbled streets and squares were filled with peaceful protesters. The restoration of the Republic of Estonia was declared from the building of the Estonian SSR Supreme Soviet on Toompea on August 20, 1991, during the Moscow coup attempt. The barricades erected around Toompea to protect the parliament from potential Soviet attack became the physical manifestation of the nation's will. The success of the Singing Revolution meant that the Old Town was no longer a decaying relic of contested past. It was reconsecrated as the sovereign heart of a reborn nation. This immediate shift in status triggered an urgent need to address the decades of Soviet-era neglect and begin the monumental task of restoring the city to its former glory. With the restoration of independence in 1991, the Estonian government faced a Herculean task of restoring Tallinn's Old Town. The challenges were immense: crumbling infrastructure, decaying buildings, and the need to reverse the damage caused by half a century of inappropriate use. The process was guided by a profound national commitment to reclaiming this symbol of Estonian identity and reconnecting with Europe. A comprehensive conservation plan was launched. The principle was conservation through use. Instead of turning the old town into an open-air museum, the goal was to make it a living, functioning part of the modern city. This involved a complex process of privatization and restitution, returning properties to their pre-Soviet owners or their heirs. New regulations were established to ensure that any restoration or renovation was historically accurate, using traditional materials and techniques. The results have been remarkable. Facades are being cleaned and repaired, revealing the original colors of the buildings. Rooftops have been retiled. The cobblestone streets have been relaid. Major projects included the complete restoration of the town hall, the churches of St. Nicholas and St. Olaf, and the Dominican monastery. International recognition came in 1997 when the historic center, Old Town, of Tallinn was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. UNESCO cited two criteria for its inclusion. Criterion 2, for exhibiting an important interchange of influences from the other Baltic countries in the evolution of its architecture and town planning over several centuries, and Criterion 4, for being an exceptionally complete and well-preserved example of a medieval Northern European trading city. This designation was not just an honor, it provided a framework and an impetus of continued preservation efforts and placed Tallinn on the global cultural map. The restoration is an ongoing process, a continuous dialogue between past and present. It balances the needs of residents, businesses, and the millions of tourists who visit each year with the imperative to preserve the site's authenticity. The success of this endeavor is a testament to Estonian resilience and a deep-seated understanding that the Old Town is the nation's most precious cultural treasure. Today, Tallinn's Old Town stands at a crossroads of time. It is simultaneously a medieval marvel, a national symbol, a residential neighborhood, and a major tourist destination. Managing these competing identities is a central challenge of the present day. Despite the tourist crowds, the Old Town remains a living entity. It is still home to several thousand residents, from artists and students of families who have lived there for generations. It houses a parliament, government ministries, embassies, and cultural institutions like the Estonian Academy of Arts. This mix of functions is crucial to its vitality. The streets that echo with tourist footsteps by day often revert to a quiet, atmospheric charm by night. The Old Town also serves as a backdrop for dynamic cultural life. It hosts music festivals, open-air concerts, and medieval days where the past is playfully reenacted. Its museums and galleries constantly reinterpret its history for new audiences. As Estonia has embraced digital innovation, The Old Town has not been left behind. It is a hub for tech startups, its medieval courtyard housing cutting-edge companies, a fitting metaphor for a country that seamlessly blends deep historical roots with a hyper-modern present. The history of Tallinn's Old Town is a microcosm of Northern European history. Its story, told across through this video, is one of continuous adaptation and survival. From the Estonian hillfoot of Lindanis to the Danish Revel, from the Hanseatic powerhouse to the Swedish administrative center, from the Russian provincial capital to the heart of an independent nation, it has absorbed influences from every era without losing its fundamental character. It has been shaped by the ambitions of kings, the ledgers of merchants, the faith of believers, and the yearning of a people for freedom. Its walls have withstood sieges, its streets have witnessed revolutions, and its stones bear the scars of war and the careful touch of restoration. More than just a collection of historic buildings, it is the soul of Tallinn and the spiritual home of the Estonian people. It is a place where history is not confined to textbooks but is palpable in the air, visible in the uneven cobblestones, and resonant in the echoing peal of church bells. As it faces the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century, Tallinn's Old Town remains what it has always been, a living chronicle, an eternal city by the sea, forever telling its story to those who walk its ancient paths. I hope you have enjoyed our video. We have tried to connect the whole history of Estonia with Old Town as it was and is the true heart of Estonia. Please subscribe to our channel to see more such videos. Thanks a lot for being with us. See you in our next video.